Creating engaging characters, make readers care, and more. Connection. During a recent rewatch of Star Wars The Force Awakens, I found myself thinking a lot about what makes viewers, or in our case readers, connect to a character and how I can achieve that in my writing. A little story. In early drafts of one of my traditionally published books, a beta reader said she just didn't care about the main character. Cue tears. I didn't understand. There was this poor girl whose mother was absent at best, believe me, it was worse, and who struggled with the turmoil caused by those poor choices. At first, I was crestfallen when I read the note, I don't connect. But after eating my weight in chocolate ice cream, doing some thinking, I unpacked what my beta meant. Yes, she sympathized with the MC because not doing so is like kicking a cat. You'd have to be heartless not to want the poor dear to get the heck out of that situation. But you see, in fiction, it isn't enough to merely sympathize or care. Those are vital, but aren't the only elements that are going to get a reader to the last page, or if they do, they might not be fist-pumping satisfied when they reach the resolution. So what was missing in that early draft of my book was the MC wasn't necessarily likable. She was bland, taupe. Her experience was mostly internal, so the reader didn't get a feel for who she was aside from being a victim. The beta didn't see her in action and how her internal struggle was reflected in her external life. Save the cat. Showing a character's positive qualities was brilliantly achieved in Star Wars The Force Awakens. I know, not a book, but hey, Rey. Do you sympathize with her? Yes. Do you like her? Yes. Is that because you feel like you know her? Yes. We see Rey scavenging and struggling, sympathy, but then we see her kindness when she encounters BB-8, her strength and determination when she interacts with Unkar Plutt on Jakku. Later, we see more of these qualities when she and Finn escape the Holy Wookiee. She knows how to fly the Millennium Falcon. That makes her pretty hardcore. She's also sweet and funny. In a word, Rey is likable. Sure enough, the term save the cat comes from screenwriting, where if the writer needs to show some redeeming quality to gain the viewer's support, they will literally have them save a cat, or a dog, or a woman crossing the street, etc., something like that. So confidence is key. Even if the story is one of transformation, like in my manuscript, where she goes through trials only later to emerge from her crappy life, there needs to be at least a glimmering of her inner girl power, or his. For example, this can be achieved through the MC having an amazing skill, the MC making a difficult decision, choosing between what is right and what is easy, MC not backing down from conflict. So the main character can be sensitive and emotional, but in touch with her inner strength at the same time, even if it doesn't fully emerge until later. But there needs to be hints, at least. Note, not every character needs to necessarily have an inner Katniss fight. It can be quiet determination, or we can see the character pushing boundaries or moving past her own comfort zones. Authenticity. The character's qualities, speech, appearance, and actions, the whole tamale, has to be authentic, like a real three-dimensional human being. Why? Because that's what we want to experience when we're reading. We want to feel like we're deep in the protag's world, with them, or that we are them in some way. It's okay for a character to be a hypocrite, to have flaws, and make poor decisions, but they have to be something he or she would genuinely do. Everything the main character does from page 1 until the end has to be authentic. So, for example, in Star Wars, it wouldn't have made sense for Rey to turn Finn into the First Order after we saw her rescue BB-8 from Tito. But if she'd kicked the droid and demanded Tito split the portions he got for trading him in for parts, well, that would be a different story, wouldn't it? We wouldn't be the least bit surprised if she turned Finn in. But of course, that's not what happened, and that's why we're rooting for her. The bottom line is the character must be true to themselves. Or if, she makes a mistake, she has to do everything in her power to make it right. Accessibility. I'm certainly not a pilot, and I'm not faced with fighting Kylo Ren, but I do know what it's like to long for something, in Rey's case for her family to return, to make difficult decisions, food or integrity at the portions counter. And I prize my freedom. This one is pretty obvious. Rey may live in another galaxy, but she's accessible. We completely understand where she's coming from. There's a balance of her being fierce and being human. At least I think she's human. You never know with Star Wars. Anyway, she's relatable. So what does this mean for my book? I had this sympathy piece dialed in. Beyond that, I knew the character inside and out. I knew what she had for breakfast, a bagel, what she wore on her first day of school in 3rd grade, a purple plaid dress, what she'd do when she found a lost dog. She'd feed him and find his owner. But the reader didn't know those things. So during those revisions, after I got the note from my beta reader, I shifted the internal reactions to external action, showing the reader that my main character was in fact, likable and relatable. I gave her more agency, putting her in situations where she'd have to draw from her inner strength and sort of put her personality into play, thereby adding dimensions and the two A's. To recap, creating sympathy, making the protagonist likable, showing the character's inner strength, and making sure they're authentic and accessible are important components in creating a character worth rooting for. What fictional characters do you love? How do you connect to the protagonist? What makes you fist pump the air and root for them? Think about this as you're reading and outlining, or pantsing.